talk about now, and you made a good transition for that, is distribution. Because like you said, the building belongs to the local distributors. Now, in terms of distribution, is there a place for Nollywood in France? I think that's a very important question that needs to be addressed. And we have somebody like Difa who is here, who is a distributor. So maybe you can tell us more about the interest for Nollywood as a distributor.
Difa is an international distribution platform which was born 1 year ago. At the moment, we have focused our attention on French-speaking African production, but we are very interested in enriching our catalog with English-speaking African films and fiction. When I say fiction, I mean TV series, for example. At the moment, at the beginning, we wanted to focus especially on TV series because they don't travel a lot around the world. So I'm getting to know Nollywood, and as some of you were saying before, I'm not sure whether these 7 films are representative of Nollywood in the sense that maybe they are la crème de la crème, the best. So I think maybe two things just to start the conversation. If there are films as the one I saw yesterday, François, there is absolutely a potential. I would be very interested in commercializing the films because maybe it was a local story, but universal at the same time. And we were African European audiences together yesterday, and we were all laughing. Maybe I was not laughing for the same things, or I was not probably catching everything, but it was really, really nice. And also there were moments of romance and the rhythm of the narrative. There was really a rhythm which European audiences, for example, are accustomed to. So it can work. I think it can work. So there is definitely, from my point of view, a potential, and maybe I think that also that Nollywood TV could tell us more about, because they already have audiences for this kind of films. And then also there is the questions of your expectations, because the issue of dubbing and subtitling shows that maybe the need for producer is to work from the beginning with an international sales agent or distributors from the main countries, just to know what are the expectations, cultural expectations, for example, of audiences in these countries, and also to rely on a distributor. Your work as producers and directors is to produce and direct your film, is the artistic and the financing of your film. But then for the international distribution, I think it's another job. So as the colleague was saying, I think it's very important to work maybe from the beginning with an international sales agent to ask about the potential. And I think there is a potential for distribution.
Are you talking about this French distribution in French or international?
No, international.
Because I have a question to, for example, your film from Nigeria. There is a market in Ghana, in South Africa, in different English country, African country or England country. Do you have a market or not?
We do have markets, but you see, in terms of distribution, like both of them have said, I think the practice will change such that working with international distributors has been a challenge, particularly because of lack of knowledge as regards the situation with the kind of work we're coming out with in Nollywood. People still have this stereotype of the movies that we used to do in the past, but things are changing. Maybe with people like you, people like him, they get to experience the new wave, so to speak. I won't call it creme de la creme yet. The new wave, of movies that we are doing, and that's personal to me because there's still room for improvement. People will get to know it, and maybe because when I was going to do my film Tango with Me, I made efforts to get agents. I went to Cannes severally to get. Made a business plan, give them my script, and it's like, coming from Nollywood, we don't think anything good will come from Nollywood, right? So there is that bias, and there is that a mindset as regards the kind of work we're doing. So that's why what they're doing with Nollywood Week in Paris is quite innovative. It's something we look forward to really that will bring about a change. So the experience of working with distributors it's going to be new for us. It's something we welcome, but we look forward to it.
Who is handling your rights? Who is handling the rights of Nigerian film? How many sales agents you have in Nigeria?
That's the point I'm making.
This is the key point.
Exactly, that's the key point. It's a new experience because what we had in the past was the straight to DVD thing. We had the cinema culture in the past where we make our movies go to the cinema, but the fiscal situation in Nigeria economically.
I'm talking about international market.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In the international market, we have one or two people working with us, but they don't have that scale. They don't have that number. So it's a new experience.
Well, I think it would be more useful if we had the time for this kind of discussion to happen after you have seen all the movies.
Yes.
Because the thing about Nollywood is not one, it's diversity.
Yeah.
That's why we're showing all of this.
Yes, that's
to show the
see
difference.
this representation. And then just in the beginning, maybe next year there'll be more things to look at. But what I wanted to say is we should not forget it depends on your focus as international. Because you could be looking to Europe, you could be looking to America, but in the indigenous languages and culture, the specific, for instance, in Yoruba, Chonri, at home, in the homeland, you have about 35 million people. But when you now look at the...
Who are Yorubas?
Who are Yorubas and Yoruba culture,
yeah.
This is a language that goes outside the geographical boundary of Nigeria into West Africa. And in Brazil alone, you are looking at the possibility of reaching 50 million people. So
Cuba, Trinidad,
Antigua, Haiti, US, and all that. So, and these are people waiting. These are audience we need to work at, we need to reach. We have to form alliances, so...
You mean the diaspora?
Yeah.
In diaspora.
How many are you?
No, not just the diaspora.
I'm just saying in the homeland, you have about 50 million, 30 million people, and outside, you have about access to about 50 million.
50.
Yes. And then that suggests that you could, Nollywood can go this way or that way, depending on your focus and your projected audience. So that's the
I wanted to say that the formalization of international distribution for Nollywood films is a huge challenge. The films that we are watching during this Nollywood Week in Paris are, as everyone has said, the highest quality Nollywood films. What is interesting is that the so-called low-quality Nollywood films are massively present everywhere in Africa. In pirated form, in proper form, you just go into any market. In francophone countries, in anglophone countries, in spite of language barriers, they are massively present. They're present all over the world. I live in Sacramento, in California. Sacramento has a big African community. They sell Nollywood in Sacramento. So the problem is not...
You mean out of the diaspora community?
Yeah.
Out of the diaspora, even though people are watching. Yes, I'm sure. In fact, when I ask in my classes at the University of California, where we have a very diverse student body, and I say, who has heard of Nollywood? Now, obviously the Nigerians have, but you also find, the Afghan students have heard of Nollywood. The Indian students have heard of Nollywood. The African American students have heard of Nollywood, and they've all come across these films through very informal distribution channels. So there's already a demand, there's already considerable interest. What we don't yet have is a formalization of international distribution.
So, talking about distribution, I think the Nollywood model has been that, for me personally as a filmmaker, I am writer, director, producer, distributor, sales agent, lawyer, actor, and that's across the board. Every filmmaker you find there is pushing their own product. Kunle's just come back from Portugal, where he's been pushing his work, and that's where we need assistance, the structure to have sales distributors, so that you can get a minimum guarantee from a sales distributor, and you use that as part of your equity. There are aspects, because the potential of Nollywood is mind-boggling. I live in the UK, and when we were trying to establish a more cinema-based industry away from DVDs in the UK. The challenge was getting access. That was until we made the point to prove the point that we do not have to be mainstream to be mainstream. I made a film in 2001 called The Mirror Board, and it premiered at Empire Leicester Square in London, and that opened 1,000 doors. And all of a sudden, the distributors in the UK started seeing that they don't have to conform, that we don't have to conform to their standards to have a market. We have a market already. And it takes...
So we have our own form.
Talking about markets, can Nollywood TV give us some numbers? How many people in France are watching Nollywood TV?
Yeah, you know, it's part of a pack, so we don't have precise numbers. It has been integrated in our Bouquet Africain, which is broadcasting French African channels. So we can consider that in France, around 150,000 people have access to Nollywood TV.
I thought it was a premium thing that you have to pay extra to watch Nollywood TV.
Yeah, it's in the premium pack, but almost everyone is the premium.
You have 150,000 subscribers.
Yeah, subscribers.
For France.
Yes. And then in Africa, on CanalSat, you have more than 500,000 viewers.
So with your films, you can reach 150,000 right now in France.
My questions, on the average, like, how much do you pay? Right to a film, different duration, maybe 12 months or let's say 18 months, 2 years. Give us an idea of what you pay.
It's quite difficult because the deal with Mnet is that
stop going to Mnet.
Ask that question again.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Of course. No, because sometimes, I don't know if you have. Do you have figure eight?
What?
Do you have the figure eight?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do you have the billboard?
No?
Yeah, my figure eight.
What is it? No, I don't. No.
I can give you another example if you don't want to give the numbers. I can tell you that a film with Shah Rukh Khan and Katrina Kaif, for example, is sold to France between $0 to $5,000. So it gives you an idea about how much your film is sold here. But this is the normal market because there is no market.
Yes. But the point is that
we have to build the market.
Yeah, we bought upfront 750 hours of movies. So it's like a huge volume. So of course.
That is where the problem is because some of us, of course, like Obi said, we are filmmakers and we're also business people. Yeah. And all the films I've made, I've always been the executive producer, the sales agent, the distributor, the exhibitor, because we do traveling theater sometimes. We put our projector in our van and we travel with the films, to different locations. And the unique thing about Nigeria is the fact that we have numbers, all right? And I made a deal. I mean, we go to festivals like every year, Berlinale, Cannes, blah, blah. And when you go there, you see a lot of people, but it's as if you don't see anybody, because you go back home. I mean, when you show them your film, the question will be, who is in it? If it's not Shah Rukh Khan or Denzel Washington, then really you are nobody, all right? And the last, like Phone Swap, for example, I did a deal because I'm not going to give. I find it difficult to give my film to someone who will say to me, okay, we'll do sales on return and we cannot pay you until, because we're not even sure if your film is going to sell. So there was an offer, and I'm going to share this, and someone came and said, okay, give us this right, give us this right, give us this right, okay, retain this right, and we'll give you minimum guarantee of $120,000. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't sound bad. At least I'm having, raw cash. And I took the $120,000. And I'm like, okay, well, this saves me from going to, and these are UK rights, US rights, Europe rights, and he doesn't, it does not include every platform. You know, I'm still holding back like television rights and stuff like that. And if you're getting such money, I think, you know, it encourages you to want to, and this is for a local film, you know, from Nigeria. You know, and I just don't like the way most distributors, you know, because when you go to them as an African, independent African filmmaker, they always seem like they're doing you a favor by even talking to you.
It is a favor.
Oh, really?
Of course.
No.
Because the number of content that you have in the market, no, let me, of course, it's a joke, but yeah, it's a favor. You are not, you know, I'm quite familiar with the Indian cinema, and remember that Indian cinema is not only Bollywood. Bollywood is 1/4,
yes,
okay? So they have exactly the same problem. You remember that this year, it's the Indian cinema is 100 years, yes, and you have only 20 or 30 years. They have exactly the same problem. You know what is Bollywood, but have you heard about Rajanikanth? In France, nobody knows who is Rajanikanth. Some, because he's the big star from the south, for example. And when you arrive, I was with a guy in Cannes. This year it was my 26th year in Cannes. I was with the guy, the producer of Rajanikanth. The guy said, this is his last film. I don't understand why I can't sell this film here. The guy is super rich, you can imagine, in India. Because there is no market for this kind of language, body language. But there is a local market. There is a very few films that are traveling all around the world. So the core market for cinema is basically national market. And then you have some films that are traveling. And why are they traveling? Because they are good, they are different. So do different films.
Yes, what I'm talking about, it's something new is building right for the moment. And that's, I will just explain my experience, because I think Nigeria and Nollywood is the same from all African director and film. And for example, I produced this film from Jomunga, first film. Okay, well done, but the story is run new in Congolese, a polar film, and we produce with France, Belgium, and Congo. And of course, in France, we have a lot of possibility to find money with foreign affairs, and we have a lot of guichet, and it helps a lot. Okay, but after that, okay, we have a strong script, and then we need to find, because we get to the broadcast, we bring Canal, Ciné Plus, for the first time on this film, first film in Lingala, without a star, without nothing. They say, something brand new. Then we say, let's see. We do the film during 3 years in Congo, Kinshasa. We shot the film. After that, it was a kind of fairy tales, but we fight for that. And I will just explain my experience. As a market, can be something new building. And after that, when we finish the film, we get to Toronto, Berlin, at the Panorama, and then we sell the film everywhere. I mean, Canada, UK Metrodome, and Music Box, one of the most independent distributors in the United States. And here in France, for example, we released the film theatrical in Lingala with Happiness Distribution. We make 25 screens, and we have around 40,000 people getting. Something happened with we sell the film in 28 countries. I mean, and it's now when I've been to Nigeria, we won a lot of African Movie Awards with this film, and something happened, but it's take time. You know, and it was just the beginning, and now, for example, I developed new film from Africa, and people say, maybe we can do something. But before that, every distributor said, look, African community don't go to the cinema. Say, look, the Congolese, for example, here local is enormous. They will be in Châtelet-Léal, in UGC, it was amazing. There is sometimes there is no white people. Where we are, and I would just I would explain my experience, because I think it's because your film, I don't watch your film, but I think it's something new about such new vision, a new point of view as artistic. And I mean, we have no business plan, and we can't talking about a new business plan in terms of market, in terms of distribution. But it depends. Every film, it's a new story, and I think something happened, and I feel in Toronto, I feel in Berlin, there is a real interest about new story in Africa. That's my feeling, and that's why how we can find money.
Please, can I use the Indian example that the gentleman has used? And I want to counter what he said and said the distributors are not doing us a favor by talking to us. They're not. The Indian experience in the UK was that there are probably about, right now, maybe 3 million Indians living in the UK. And they are very culturally connected with the Indian subcontinent. But they weren't seeing their films. They were seeing them on DVDs. That was until one distributor took a chance on an Indian film. And this was in 1998. But what has happened now, before any bookers that book the cinemas in the UK, before on Monday when they're booking any film, they must have an Indian film. Because what happened was that the Indian community now connected with the Indian films they were showing, and now they have Indian cinemas, exclusively Indian cinemas, as well as being in the mainstream. And I go back to what happened with the Mirror Boy. When we opened with the Mirror Boy in July 2011, Odeon was taking a chance on it. We had a good premiere, and they saw a lot of people. They said, okay, let's give them a chance. And it was one of those chances they give you half expecting you to fail. But what happened? Because we promoted well, because there was a hunger amongst our people, people came out, and even though we were showing in only 10 cinemas of the 200 that Odeon had, in our first weekend of opening, we were top 10. We were top 5. Number 5 out of 200 cinemas that Odeon had, and we were only showing in 10. What did I tell you? We were literally selling out every seat in every screen that we were showing. So the potential is there. And on the back of that, a lot of films came, including Tango With Me, that came to the UK and did good business. But we've taken this as far as we can. We've shown that there is possibility. What we need is a bit of support from the mainstream to exploit this, because there is hunger, we've got numbers. If 1% of Nigerians alone in the UK go and see a film, it will be number 1.
But it seems like what is needed most is the professionalization.
No, I think the issue here is this, right? What the distributors who take on our films, like he said, they see it as tokenism. Yes. The amount of support they give to other films from other clients, if they give our films such support, or even have, right, they will do well. Because whether we like it or not, people from diaspora are everywhere, right? And if you just target, we're not targeting mainstream, right, with our films. Of course, we can't compete with the blockbusters from Hollywood. But even to the diaspora market, African films, not just Nollywood, to the diaspora market, and they get enough push in terms of support, publicity support, you will see the amazing results that we get to buttress what it's saying. But what they usually do is that they just give you that you are compelled to do the publicity yourself, you know. So that is what is critical.
But that's the problem, because it's also not your role as a director.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's the point we're making.
So spending a lot of money.
The point you made about favor, it's a two-way thing. I know you were joking about it. No doubt.
If there is a market, they will not do you a favor.
They will not do it, of course. I know. If there's a market, but unfortunately, it's not that they don't know there's a market. There's this mindset about films from Africa, right? Particularly, and let me tell you something.
It is a business. If there is a potential, they will get.
So let me say this. Even in Nigeria, we had the same problem with distribution. Yes. Oh, yeah. Right? They didn't believe Nollywood movies in Nigeria could make it to the cinemas.
Your film released in Nigeria?
Yes, of course. Until it was more successful than
I'm listening for my
kind of new film.
And I had
the Hollywood.
My film did better. My film when Thor came out. My film did better than Thor. Yeah. In Nigeria cinemas.
Okay. When First World came out, for 3 weeks, it was number one in West Africa for 3 weeks.
So the point is that the distributors need to give that chance. And once they give us a chance, then push it also the way they will, maybe halfway the way they will push any other movie. And let's see the result. Because a lot of our people, I will use the word our people, when you say, "Oh, did you get to see?" I didn't hear about it. I didn't know about it. You know, because they're not being pushed.
One thing that is important is I've not seen many the new crop of African filmmakers making film now. I've not seen many of them in Paris. But I was lucky to be part of the team that kind of worked a bit on Viva Riva. So when it was premiering here, I was invited. With the little thing that Joe and Boris did, the little effort they made, with the fact that they kind of reached out a lot to the Congolese community, they already proved to us in Paris that there is a huge market for cinemas like this. Now let's work on that, plus the popularity that Nollywood has presently. Like what they did, then adds the popularity of Nollywood to it. I think you will get ×3 of what they got. This is just for sure. So for me, talking about market, it's obvious that there's a huge market, and there is, in Paris alone, I think